What is up, everybody? Welcome in. This is episode 17 of the Cougar Digest podcast. I am one of the hosts, Rob Sellers, publisher of Cougar Digest, joined as always by Mr. Kevin and Gatlin as well on an eventful live stream for this Sunday afternoon after the end of an era, so to speak, good or bad, the end of the era over on Colon Boulevard of Dan Holgorsen, who was relieved of duties today. It's been active on the board this morning, guys. How plugged in and stuff have you guys been able to be throughout the day so far? I know, Kevin, you've been busy.
Hey, Rob. Well, I've been busy, but that's because I've been preparing to go back to work after a long vacation. So that's kind of what I've been doing a lot of today, but a lot of multitasking, getting ready to go on air with you. And really, Rob, just keeping track of the board to see what's going on, keeping track of what you're reporting out there also. But yeah, new era begins today, correct? And that's why I have it written down on my little secondary tagline. There is, it's an exciting time. It's a chance for us to get to talk about some things, right? And to just kind of put some guesswork into what's going to happen next. But yeah, exciting time. I think you always hate to have to fire a coach, but I think every coach understands that that's a possibility. Every time they sign a contract, there's a chance that they probably will get fired from it also. But Holgorsen, I already hear his name being mentioned with a lot of OC jobs around the country. So I'm pretty sure he will find a job pretty quickly. I don't think there's any doubt to his ability to call offensive plays and X's and O's on the offensive side. He'll get a job pretty quickly, I think. But then again, I don't know what his contract stipulates about payouts from this head coaching position, and there might be a clause in there. I'm not really too sure.
Yeah, I think there's not an escalation. I forgot what the term is for it, but the clause where it's offset basically if you get another job.
Mm-hmm. Now, is that any job, or is that a head coaching job, or an OC job, or any other?
That's where you have to get exactly. That's where you need to get into the actual technicalities.
Kevin. When you make a good point though, certainly Dana Holgorsen is going to be just fine with his $15 million settlement out of this whole deal. There's one thing though, obviously we're going to have a lot of fun and kind of dive into some of this stuff and talk about what's next. But there is one thing that we should kind of point out about, there are coaches who are going to be impacted by this who are not as set for life as Dana Holgorsen is, right? And who are real people. They've got, kids and daughters in high school or families who've, kind of built their life around being in Houston. And, there's certainly a lot of uncertainty for guys on the staff today. So, we do want to kind of just, send a thought and prayer up to all those guys and, hope the best for all those guys, whether they're retained or not, for sure.
That's a good point. Just talking to a couple of people that were at the building today, it was said that it was sad. There's a bit of heaviness around there, and obviously they had a little bit of time with staff or whatever that was around, and Yeah, I mean that's the part I think is easily forgotten sometimes. These are all human beings, and this is an event that, although a lot of people are asking for, it's gonna it impacts everybody's lives uh, for the days and weeks and months and years to come. So, yeah, like you said, thoughts with those people who are having to make decisions everywhere, from team to staff to everybody. So,
so guys,
Hey, Gala, you've already got a question here from the
Galen's taking the
viewers
show
here.
over.
Yeah,
right.
talk about your printed frames on the wall.
Yeah, there's a little shout out to my wife actually. We moved into our house about a year ago, and I had nothing on this wall. It was just a blank wall. I looked like I was like in a ransom video. And so for Christmas last year, my wife decorated my office and got me some nice U of H themed stuff. I think she found these on Etsy. There's a person, you just like they take the stadium map on like StubHub or whatever, and they print it out into a nice little
Pretty cool idea.
print right there. So yeah, Etsy. There you go.
Nice.
The more you know.
There you go, Connor. Etsy.
Yeah. No, I do think Rob, Kevin, and I were talking about this a little bit before the show started. I know you're a classy enough guy. You're not gonna be shouting "I told you so" about all of this.
I am classy. He's said that a little louder for people in the back. My family.
I want to take a moment on the show.
Good thing we're recording this.
That's right.
Yeah, dude, seriously.
In memoriam.
Speaking of framing stuff and putting it on the wall. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're
Galen's
fine.
looking for a raise. I think that's what he's doing. He's looking for a raise.
That's right. Yeah.
Double whatever we're paying you, Gatlin. Double.
I did want to take a couple moments and just kind of walk through some of how we got to where we did, and Rob, give you a chance to kind of post-mortem talk about what was going on, because obviously Kevin and I had a little bit more knowledge about what was going on, but you put a lot out on the board that I think whether you understood it or not, you were inside on this the whole time, and so
I felt like I had a good thumb on it. I did. You know what I mean? It's one of those happy medium type deals. You want to be careful with putting stuff out there, because I like to hope over this time frame. I built a bit of a reputation where my words carry a little bit of meaning, when I say things. So in that case, like I put a lot into in terms of depending on where it goes down the line. It's funny how, and I don't want to left field squirrel this thing here in a minute, but my ADHD is kicking in. But going back, it's weird when you look to these situations, and it's fun. Me and Sam have covered these over the years a few times. Sam Kahn, buddy of mine, obviously I've mentioned him before, and he was on the show earlier. But we always tend to go back after the fact and compare how some of this stuff played out. And it's always kind of funny how, in hindsight, some of the things you missed or did or didn't get. And so we'll see when the information came up last week about Gary Patterson. It flooded back last offseason. I think that's kind of when all this really started getting kicked up, was last offseason. Obviously, there was unhappiness with the way the season went last year. And it was a weird offseason when I started getting phone calls about, hey, there's rumors floating around, and this Houston job might be opening up. And I started getting some phone calls from members of the media that were largely Texas based, and they were all telling me that, hey, I hear this job's open and Jeff Traylor's the perfect guy for this job. And I wasn't necessarily arguing against Jeff Traylor at the time, but the people I'd spoken to had said, if they're going to make a move last offseason, the only way they would be willing to do it would be for one of just 2 or 3 names, and it'd have to be a major name. And one of the names that was brought up was Gary Patterson, in terms of his ability to make an impact if they were going to make a move last year, which would have been more money, I'm assuming, right? If the buyout was last year, it would have been another year's. I mean, still you had to pay the same amount in the end, but so when you fast forward back to in the last week, whenever the reports started coming up about Gary Patterson again, it at least made him a front runner in my mind if the change was made. And because of a lot of things we talked about, and we'll probably dig a little bit more into the pros and cons of Gary Patterson a little bit, but really what really started kicking it up this year was right around the bye week. Bye week, I just started, everyone knows by the time the bye week was there that things were disappointing. They were heading into the West Virginia game. things weren't looking so hot. And I know that the biggest point in the turn of that after the offseason where Dana Holgorsen famously with Sam no less talked about the buyout and the profane lace stuff that was, he's not worried about it and this and that. That's now become famous. Obviously, people are going to make fun of that for years to come. That's got to be a meme somewhere already, right?
Absolutely.
Just when I was able to speak to my sources in the phrase "all options are on the table," meaning that was not going to be an issue. Like they weren't going to let the buyout be the issue. Now, it's been weird chasing it the last couple of weeks because everything seemed to be cruising along just fine after that point. You come out of the bye week, you get the Hail Mary in West Virginia, and while I'm sure everyone was thrilled to get the win, it was a great win. It really was. I don't want to take anything away from that in the moment that it was, just how many you're a Hail Mary away from losing that game in a bad way by collapsing again late in the game. So I didn't think the win really changed much for it from that aspect, but I knew that probably it was going to be easier to get everyone on board with pulling the trigger the less successful they were. And that's not something that I can do personally. I know some people were at that point where they were just tired of Holgorsen and wanted to, whatever. I don't care if it takes lose. That's some mindset of some people, and I get that. Just it's tough for me to root against the success of all these kids and stuff like that. Like I've said before, you get to know these guys and some of the staff, and you get to know them so well through the process that you just root for them to do good. You want to see them succeed. My life's easier. Let's be honest; it's funner. We have a better time when things are successful. So. It was one of those double-edged swords. The more success they were able to build down the stretch, they played Texas well that week. The less likely it was going to be they were going to move on, and so it was one of those which one do you wish for type thing. So it threw it for a bit of a loop though this past week, and I knew there was a chance it was going to happen. When they had the groundbreaking, they went out there, and some of the media was able to get a hold of Tillman and get some thoughts and quotes from Tillman, and it went against basically everything I'd heard up to that point, and that's what caused a lot of people a lot of confusion too. Everyone was unsure, and they were like, "Well, go ahead. What were you about to say, Gatland?"
Oh, no, I was going to say the moments that stood out to me. So obviously, you're right. Like the everything is on the table moment. I think gave people a lot of hope because it was kind of groundbreaking to say, going into the season, you're right. I don't think any of us
people thought he was probably right with the not being by.
Exactly. So that was a big note to say, hey. It is on the table. Those conversations are being had. And then the next one, actually, for me, and I don't remember when exactly this was or how you put it out there. This may have even been something you just told Kevin and I, but there was the conversation. I want to say it was after maybe Kansas State or something like that. That basically, it sounded like winds were starting to change, and that if that the quote from the beginning of the season actually meant something from Pesman.
Right.
That 6 and 6 is the standard, right? And that if that doesn't get met, that things were going to change.
It started to feel that way too. After they said all options were on the table, I'd have to look and see what the record was heading out of the bye week. But obviously, it wasn't that great. They got the West Virginia win. They lost to Texas. Kansas State was right after Texas. Is that right? Or was it?
Yes, that was the next week.
Okay. So you see how that played out. And in the Kansas State, give credit to Kansas State. They got a great program up there. And we talked about it at the time. But to go up there and play like that, it's just one of those you can't – that's not helping yourself when you're going through the process. And it felt like he was kind of fighting for his job. I was kind of told, like I said before during the bye week, that it felt like everybody was on board with moving forward if that's the decision at the end. Now, they weren't like, yes, we're going to move now, but they were like finally on the same page in terms of this is something that's on, like I said, everything's on the table. So
but having that specific number, right? Like you said, again, Pesman set the standard at the beginning of the year.
He did say that at Big 12 Media Days.
Yeah, but it didn't feel like it really meant much. Like, yeah, sure, right. 6 and 6 is the standard, and as long as we're not 2 and 8, then we'll be fine here. And when you told us that like 6 and 6 really is the standard, I think you said it on the board at some point that.
Yeah, and I think I did too. 6 and 6, and they did. Pesman did say that at the bowl game, at the Big 12 Media Day that that the bowl at 6-6 in a bowl game has to be the expectations. They understood there was a step up in competition in the Big 12, but that was realistic expectations for year 5 of a program. You know what I mean? All these things and I agree. I don't think that was unrealistic expectations, and I think this team could have got there potentially. Just had things in different spots been different. But I mean, I could twist and turn and pick and pull apart things like that forever. But it did feel more realistic after that, because then you saw as the win total got to 4, of course, right? And then they were going to go in and play what they have left, obviously Central Florida, and before that was Cincinnati, right?
Yeah.
So, right, they were sitting at
Baylor,
4, and everyone thought, well, Cincinnati and UCF potentially are winnable. Or Oklahoma State was in there. Sorry, Oklahoma State before.
Yeah, that was going into their last 3. They had OK State.
Right. They had to win 2 of 3.
Yeah, and W.
And people still at that point felt, because they'd played a little bit better, that that was a doable thing. And I think if they would have got to 6 wins, I think he would have been safe. I really do. I mean, I don't know how that would have played out moving forward, but just me personally, after seeing it play out, I don't know. I think it's a good move. I think Houston made the right move today. I just don't think I've seen anything from this staff as a whole that would tell me they're going to go into this offseason and be successful in the same ways they weren't successful last offseason. I don't see anything that was going to change that. And so in the end, I think they made the right call. And we'll find out, over the next days or so what it exactly came down to. We'll probably get a little bit of tidbits here and there in terms of how that conversation truly went at the end, and if everyone was on board, or if it involved a little bit of pleading the case, so to speak. And, it's one of those double-edged swords. You got Tillman Fertitta that's done so much for the school. I mean, so much, even above and beyond probably what people realize. He's given them the obvious salary spots and stuff like that. But, I mean, at the same sense, if he was going to put his foot down on the money and keep Holgorsen another year, it's a double-edged sword. You appreciate everything he's done, but until it gets you into a problem, you know what I mean? And so, I get the complicated nature of it. I'm sure it was difficult.
For sure. Well, yes. I mean, certainly there's the personal angle of their relationship and all that, but also
and that stinks for them. I could be honest, that's probably bad for them. I mean, a lot of people won't care about that, but Tillman, who's got a buddy, that he knows well, he had to call him up probably, or someone had to be the person to call and tell him the news. And from what I understand today, a lot of people really acted. I was told that this seemed like they really didn't expect it. Like I was kind of on the theory in the last few days or week or so that they were probably aware of what was going on, but the initial reports out of the building today were that a lot of people didn't really. That seems like they were taken off guard by it. So
interesting. And that does ultimately kind of point to one of the many problems of this regime, right? Which is kind of just the lack of self-awareness, right? That really you didn't see this coming at all.
Yeah, no, that's another part of it. Yeah, people were probably exactly the other side of that. Those people that.
But to go back to the previous point there. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. What were we saying right before that?
I don't remember either. Jibber jabber.
Shoot, man.
But I mean, jibber jabber.
I think no, I really do. I think they made a good call today. I really did. I think that it was a tough one, probably. I think it was pretty telling. Dr. Couture was real quiet the last week. I don't think anyone really got many quotes from her, right? Or I think she said something to the effect she'll wait till the end of the season to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then leave it till then. I think at one point she said, she leans on Tillman for these decisions and whatnot. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. It was, as tough as it is of a decision personally, again, I think a lot of us wanted it to happen during the season or whatever, or saying, hey, we need to get a jump on this and that. But, as I kind of watch how it has played out with Texas A&M, right? Their decision to fire him before the end of the season, get a jump on it. And at the end of the day, they're in no better of a situation than we are.
Yeah, I saw that. That was breaking a while ago. They officially made it official, I guess. They hired Elko.
Oh, yeah, I must have missed it.
Right as we were about to come on, and someone mentioned it earlier in the talk, too. I just saw it. Someone else can find it here. But it looks like they went with Mike Elko right about the time. Yeah, A&M hiring Elko. News within the last 30 from Connor.
I like that move for them. But at the end of the day, right? I mean, you pay Jimbo $76 million not to coach, and Mike Elko, who you come away with, right? I mean, and so I think that was also one of the words, Rob, that you gave to us was, if Tillman was going to pull the trigger, part of his criteria was we need to be able to have an immediate and noticeable improvement, right, in whoever they hire,
Right.
And I don't think that was taken lightly, right? And I think you look at all the options that are on the table, and certainly, again, we'll debate the pros and cons of all of them, and people will feel different ways, but I think all of us will sit there and say noticeable improvement from this staff. And the last thing you want to do is pay that huge buyout, the fifth largest in college football history, and not be satisfied with the hire. And so I think the staff has done it the right way. Again, there's some thoughts that there might already have been a decision made, and
yeah, I put that on the board earlier. It feels like just from talking to some people already, it feels like they've been working on this in the event that it comes to this, which is another reason why I brought up the news coming out with Gary Patterson last week, and why it might even fit more in terms of him being a likely front runner in this situation, because he's got the ability to step in right away. He's not waiting for anything else. They know the window they're working with the portal opening next Monday, and early signing period December 20th, and traditional signing day on February 7th. So in the midst of that, you got the end of the semester. So anybody in the portal that's looking to find a new home and be there for spring is going to have to decide by the end of December in terms of their new destiny. I mean, this is going to go fast, obviously, and that's
right.
Good and bad. You know what I mean? Take it for what it's worth. I'm sure whoever's going to take this job and be on the staff is going to have to hit the ground running. And so the report last week that Patterson's already had conversations with Houston and that has been working on potential staff already, that would seem to definitely match up in terms of the window, and I'm interested to find out how much of a parameter that plays in their search in terms of, did you disclude anybody from the search? And again, I'm kind of assuming that it's done, like I've been told it feels like it's done. But did you leave anybody out because they weren't going to be available? And that's one of the main things that comes up as we start talking about more of the candidates and all that is I'll bring that up as we go through the list, that their availability and just how quickly they could be on scene probably, I would think, played a factor in it to an extent.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, do we just want to dive into that? Actually,
you just want to go through some of the candidates, Kevin?
Yeah, let's just go through it.
Slides we can go through.
It's just some slides,
slides
for the candidates. I think that are probably the main ones that the University of Houston is looking through. Of course, we don't have the full list of candidates that they're looking at.
Well, if you can get that, then
that didn't. Let me get that on the screen here.
It might be a different show. Yeah,
might be a couple of reviews.
I just went with what Rob had put on the board.
From the desk of
who to look for,
Dr. Couture.
So I just put 4 of them on here and just put some of their stats. So the first one I think is that I had on there, and these are in no order whatsoever. Okay, they're just, hey, this is a name, here's a name, here's a name.
Right. Kevin likes Willie Fritz. We know it.
Well,
he put his slide first. That's Kevin's early favorite.
Actually, I have a different early favorite.
Actually, might not be far off on that.
He might not be, but Willie Fritz, he brings. Okay, he's had the last 2 years have been really good years for Willie Fritz. Okay,
yeah, for real.
23-3, something like that. At Tulane, but before that, I mean, they really didn't do very much. And I think what has helped Willie Fritz a lot is the portal. You go back 2 years, he was a 2-10 team. The next year, he's 12-2. So I think that the portal is something that has helped Tulane quite a bit.
Louisiana is
one of the knocks
as well. So yeah, they would be similar to Houston, that they could bring some folks home that way. Yeah, go ahead.
The only knock for me, there's a couple of them whenever it comes to Willie Fritz. One is it's his age, and I don't want to use that against anybody, but if he's already going to be 64, before we even get into next season, and he goes through a full contract, how likely is it we're going to re-up if he is able to turn this program around? Or know, are we just gonna have to be looking for another coach in another 4 or 5 years because he's had enough of this? You know, I just don't know. Another thing is he hasn't coached at the P5 level either in any way whatsoever. You know, taking a look at the stops that he's had, in his coaching career, you know, he's never gotten above, you know, really where he's at now. So he doesn't have a whole lot of experience teaching on coaching on the P5 level. So that's just one of the things that I just kind of see as a knock. I think the guy's a great motivator. The guy obviously has a lot of discipline in his program. But I mean, I don't know. He's had 2 years of success at Tulane. He had success at the other stops that he's been at. But I mean, I don't know. That's just my thoughts on Willie Fritz. I think he'd be a good hire, but you know, is he a long-term solution for this program? And you know, I don't know. Should we be thinking about long-term? You know, do we want coaches here for 20 years or something like that? It'd be nice if you can have a coach who's successful for 20 years, but Fritz, he's not your guy if that's what you're looking for. What are your thoughts on Fritz?
Yeah, you know, Kevin, you bring up.
I misspelled his name too. It's Willie.
You know, Kevin, you bring up an interesting point about, you know, kind of the, you know, is he the guy who can be here for the long haul? And you know, I think after the way Tom Herman left, it put a bad taste in a bunch of people's mouths here in Houston.
Sure.
And we started valuing maybe some things that we shouldn't in a head coach. And
I think I like what you're about to say.
yeah, and I'll be honest, I don't know that loyalty is something I value much in a head coach. Maybe in position coaches who are more hands-on with these players, you know, you want them to care about the kids and all that stuff. But I want a head coach first and foremost who can win, right? And can recruit and can build a program and all these things. And we started looking at, you know, Major Applewhite. It's, you know, we're not going to rock the boat. It continues the H-Town takeover. He's Houston. You know, it all became about protecting, you know, the loyalty. And that's why we looked at Dana Holgorsen. This was where he wanted to be. And I think culturally that kind of sets a tone of guys of complacency. Dana Holgorsen didn't have any ambitions beyond Houston. So you're only going to work just hard enough to not lose your current job, right? And prior to prior to Major Applewhite, we had a string there of coaches who were ladder climbers. And sure, we never got to have them for very long, but each of them left the program in a better place than where they found it. All the way back from Art Briles to Kevin Sumlin. You can even make an argument that Tony Levine did a heck of good for this program in the long term. You know, even though he didn't necessarily win a ton of games, he kind of paved the foundation for Tom Herman.
He stocked the cupboard for Tom.
Yeah, to come in and have
get really good players.
And then Tom Herman, as much as we all, you know, you can have hurt feelings about the way he left, won a New Year's Six Bowl, brought the program to heights it never seen, built the greatest indoor practice facility in the country, got that built, right? Like left the program in a really healthy spot. And so, you know, is Willie Fritz the answer forever, or are any of these guys the answer forever? Probably not. But again, when you look around what's happening this offseason, I think it's just such a reminder when guys like Ryan Day and Dabo Sweeney are being linked to the Texas A&M job. It's a reminder that if one of these 2, 3, 4, 5 biggest jobs in the country wants you, there's nothing you can do. It is what it is.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it.
And so all you can do is make the best decision for right now. What sets your program up the best for the next time that you have to make this decision? And we hope that that's as long away as it can be, but ultimately you're a fool if you think you're never going to have to hire a head coach again, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's important. I think, like you said, the fan base kind of got, you know, spurned a few times, so to speak. And it left a bad taste in the mouth. And now maybe that's something that changes as a Power 5, Power 4 member in terms of you don't worry so much anymore about how long someone's going to be there. You just hire the best guy for the job today, and then you let it play out and see where it goes from there. And maybe that is, you know, maybe that's a difference that again, time has revealed more things to them. And so I could see that line of thinking, and I could see the value in it as well.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I was one of them. I was so sold on Dana Holgorsen in 2019 for that reason. And it's just, as this tenure has played out, it's something that I've kind of changed my thinking on, and hopefully the decision makers at Houston have as well. I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, but again, back to Willie as an actual coaching option. I think you're right, Kevin. I think he brings some interesting things to the table as far as being a program builder. Certainly, we don't know what his ability as a recruiter is, I feel like, because ultimately he's been kind of capped by Tulane's academic requirements, right? It's kind of one of those things. You're never going to have a top, 30 recruiting class at Tulane.
Good point. Yeah.
And so and I actually think this might be kind of out of the box thinking, but has the transfer portal helped Tulane specifically because admittance requirements are less stringent on transfers, right? So is it, Tulane can go get some guys who wouldn't qualify as a
person out of high school.
Yeah, a kid out of high school, but it's easier to get into the school as a transfer. So maybe
Good
that's
point.
also contributed to
Yeah.
his success recently in some of the recruiting battles they've won in the portal. But you're right. I mean, who knows what he could be at Houston? I certainly think, given his experience, he should be considered. My only concern, and I didn't realize he's making almost $3 million at Tulane.
Man, good for him.
I
That's a
don't
good
know.
salary.
Yeah, I don't know how much Houston is going to be
179.
able to. You'd have to make it significantly higher to make it worth his while. Although I do be curious to see what his assistant pool is, because that was something I didn't realize, but that turned out to be a big deal with keeping Doug Belk and all that a couple years ago, right? Was these coaches value not just their salary, but how much do they have to go and build their staff? Because the last thing one of these guys wants to do is go hire a great defensive coordinator, and then 2 years later he's getting plucked for a new job, and coach can't match the salary to keep him, right? So
yeah, just before we move off of Fritz here, I saw this post earlier. I wanted to Fritz did say that when he turned down the Georgia Tech job, but he's also kind of made it known behind the scenes, so to speak, that for the right situation, I'm not saying this is it, but for the right situation, he'd be willing to move one more time, but that he is close to being done with in terms of wanting to move around. So similar, not to scare anybody or cause a shiver down your spine, but similar to what Dana Holgorsen said, he'd like to probably come, if Houston is a place he would leave for, it'd probably be where he'd want to come and stay and be done at. So
yeah, and I think that's a little different.
Too soon to be saying the exact same words, but so I apologize. He did say that.
No. And something I did see on the board, I don't know if this is true. You guys can fact check me on it, but doesn't Willie Fritz have a daughter in Houston?
Yeah, Lainey Fritz. She was at KPRC when all the process of him getting hired over there, and I saw that come up too. So she was working at KPRC, and I wanted to say that I saw shortly after he went to Tulane. Either she was working for a local TV channel there in Tulane and was interviewing him at a game, or maybe she was doing some sort of work with the network that was doing the game. But I saw her because it was a big deal that she was interviewing her dad and all that, and you could tell, it was a cool moment and all that. So,
so may or may
she
not
is involved in media, or she was involved, but I don't know currently what she's doing. I don't want to be the creepy Google stalker guy here on the internet right now.
Okay, not in Houston.
My wife checks my computer.
I saw someone say that she worked there. I didn't know if she was still in Houston or not, because obviously
she's not here anymore. I think she went over that way whenever he did, but I don't know if that's where she's still at. And I'm sure she would. Yeah, if that's a big factor, then I want to say they're probably from around here to begin with, if I'm not mistaken, but I don't know that to be 100% true.
Yeah. Gotcha. All right. Anything else?
Let's take a look at the next guy.
Nothing else on Fritz that I can think of off the top of my head, other than Captain Obvious. Obviously, if he were to come over here, that would probably mean some continuity in the offensive line with Coach Nagave.
Sure.
Coming from Tulane, he would probably stick around. That would be an obvious one, which could be good. Yeah, I know a lot of the guys weren't too thrilled when Brandon Jones was let go, but I've not heard any bad things about Nagave since he's been here, and so I would assume that would be something that would probably, if Fritz were the choice, that Nagave would stick around.
Yeah, man. I think two things can be true, right? Brandon Jones wasn't the problem, and also that Ahmad Nagave is also not the problem, right? Oh yeah, sure. Born in Kansas. Good call.
Yeah,
Kyle.
appreciate that, Kyle. Now you're the creepy guy that Googled him and not us.
Well, no, it's right here on the screen.
Oh, there you go. Sorry. Which is, in
Yeah.
case my wife
Yeah,
tunes in
that's
on
right
this.
there.
Yes, I know I should be going to the eye doctor before the end of the year and our insurance switches over. Here's your good reminder. Thanks,
Well, that's
Gavin.
one of the reasons why I put the information up there.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at the next option that I have on here. I can't remember which one it is. Oh yeah, Gary Patterson, the one that you've already talked about, Rob.
Yeah, Gary Patterson makes sense in terms of the quickness, in terms of him being able to come immediately almost. I don't think what he's doing at Texas is any kind of something he can't walk away from for his new job. Makes a ton of sense in terms of the longevity. Again, it's going to be an age issue. I'm sure people are going to bring up his age. We talked about that briefly earlier. I like his success. I think he's had success in recruiting. He became very well known for getting really good athletes and changing them into, they'd had the thing where they were making linebackers and D linemen out of athletes forever. And that's the thing that worked real well for them. And you got to find those things that you can capitalize on when you're playing against a bigger team sometimes. You're not going to recruit against, you're not going to hold A&M and Texas off for every big recruit, but if you can be good at finding those guys and eyeballing and identifying them, getting them in the program and developing them into what would have been somebody chased by the bigger schools, then I know it's a different era. And I could talk myself in a circle because now you bring them in, you develop into a player, and a couple of years later, there's going to be somebody knocking on the door to see if they want to transfer. So whole nother set of headaches, but I like him as a choice in terms of the ability to come in quick. That's been something I've kind of focused on from the get-go on this. The timing is going to have to be quick in terms of giving the new staff a chance to fight people from getting into the transfer portal, as well as giving them a fighting chance to get guys in here at the change of the semester so that they can have them on hand for spring ball is going to be important this year.
Yeah. And speaking of the transfer portal, I mean, not that you make a coaching decision based off of one guy, but
you would have to assume, some guys for TCU might be interested, right?
Well, that, but also, Gary Patterson was a huge part of the recruitment of Matt Golden, right? And kind of part of the reason we won that recruiting battle, if I remember correctly, was because Gary Patterson left and U of H was able to capitalize on that coaching change. So, again, not that we make a decision based on trying to retain Matt Golden, but certainly we would think that previous relationship would help try to
for
retain
sure.
him.
And maybe that means, so help me out. No, it would have been. So, right, Brian Carrington and Rashad Samples was already at TCU?
I believe
they came over. No, or they came over with the Sonny Dykes group, didn't they?
You're right. Samples was at SMU.
Yeah, because they're both at Arizona State right now. So I don't know how that plays into the how this staff gets made out whenever the hire's made. But those are some guys, obviously, that I'm sure would love to get back to Texas if there was a spot that fit them well. And they're good at what they did.
Well, and I think that's probably the biggest question for a guy like Gary Patterson is who is his staff?
Yeah, how does he assemble his staff?
Yeah, because I think there's a lot that Gary has done well, but you need the right people in place around him, and I think you'd want to see him have a young, talented OC in place and some guys who can recruit. That he's had at points in time over his career. Like a guy like Rashad Samples, who, if he were able to get back in Texas and Houston, I think that'd be a great match. That's a good call, Rob.
Yeah. Another Kansas guy also for someone who saw that Willie Fritz was from Kansas. So is Patterson's from Kansas also. A lot like Fritz, Patterson has coached though on the P5 level aside from Fritz. I like Fritz. I think the guy brings a lot to the table, but there's just something about building a program for me personally with someone who's in their mid 60s. I don't know. There's just something about it that just doesn't sit right with me. And I realize that, we want to do short term rather than long term. And I'm always thinking about long term. It's just the way that I am for whatever reason. But I do like Patterson, going with what you said, Rob. The guy was great at recruiting athletes. Just go out and give me athletes and I will find a place for them on the field. And that's how he was able to.
They became known for that development. Yeah.
Exactly. I like Patterson. I just wonder, you got to think he's got to be still motivated to go in with the way everything ended at TCU for him to go in there and not really end things like that. So I think that he's a guy who's probably going to be motivated.
re-spark something for him or not.
I would think, especially seeing the way that his roster went and played in the national championship game. You got to think like, man, what could I have done with that, right?
We're not going to. So we didn't have a slide specially made, which in the moment makes it really funny. If you had a slide for
didn't even think about it
for Jeff Banks, you could have put like a little monkey or something on there, just because everybody likes to talk about it. But we don't have a slide for him. I know the names come up. I overlapped Jeff Banks a bit at A&M when I was covering them for a few years. I knew him a little bit. We chatted off and on. He's definitely known as a good recruiter. He had his time at Alabama. He's been at Texas. I know why his name's coming up. I'm just not so sure that that's a great fit for over here right now. So if it comes to be that, so be it. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. I've just not heard his name come up from any of the people that I talked to. But I do recognize that some of the people that are putting that name out there are somewhat reputable. So it's worth noting that I've seen the name out there and I know who he is. But I don't think he would be a great fit. If you're going to go for the next hot and up and coming guy, I think there's other better options to do that with.
Yeah, I agree.
Real quick before we move on from Patterson, one thing that I do think is a pretty big concern if they do go with Gary Patterson. You look at where TCU, because I think it's easy to draw the similarities of, hey, Gary Patterson brought TCU from Group of Five,
right?
And he could come do the same thing here. I think where the programs were very different, right? So I looked at this TCU, their average attendance when they came from the Mountain West into the Big 12, they were already averaging close to 50,000 people per game their first year in the Big 12. And TCU in general has always had a really great fan base, a lot of resources, and they just needed the legitimacy of coming into a Power 5 conference. And Gary Patterson is great at X's and O's, and maybe I haven't followed him close enough to know this, but I don't feel like he's a guy who's ever been out selling TCU as a program. I don't think he's ever had to do that at TCU.
Didn't he write a song or something? He had a guitar. Remember that became a big thing too for a while. He released a song and all that. And maybe I'm about to make a fool of myself. I'm pretty sure I would remember that and remember it appropriately. Someone else can confirm I'm not crazy in a minute on the comments. But yeah, he's he wrote a whole country song. I'm looking at it.
So maybe I'm wrong, but I think
no, but I'm not saying that answers your question. I'm just
no, but I mean in general, I'm saying I don't know this for sure, but one of the questions I would ask and be concerned about is Gary Patterson a guy who can, excite the fan base and, can do those things? And I understand the idea that, hey, if you win, it'll take care of itself. Sure. But I just feel like given where this program is at, it would help a lot. I think it would make things easier if they had a guy in place who, could kind of do some of that salesman stuff that we've had, from some coaches over the years.
No, that's true, and that's another thing, that I think you want a coach that's I don't know. It's weird. You've had all angles of it from Tony Levine was a very nice guy. Everyone wonderful man. Everyone loved to be around him. He was the epitome of class and this and that. But then I would hear some people like, well, you want a guy that wants to hang out and have a few drinks with you type thing. And I don't think that was necessarily up Tony's alley. But then you have the other end of that. You know what I mean? I guess this last time would have been the other extreme. So you got to have someone that's going to be at least is going to get along well and be making the higher end donors happy to continue to want, because this NIL deal is not going away and it's only going to grow. So you have to be personable enough to do that. And I don't know much about Gary Patterson off the field, but I know that's going to play a part into it. And that's, I guess that's one of those things. You don't make your decision on hiring or not hiring somebody on if they're friendly or not. So, I mean, that's one of the things obviously that comes into play on a bigger scale, but not for you and I. So I think it's a good point. You got to make sure he's a guy that can be the face of the program and can spearhead it, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe
And
this
I
is
mean,
really the reason why he got fired from TCU is
You found the country music.
I found it. It's called Take a Step Back. Yeah.
Hey, I knew I wasn't that crazy.
that's
There's a
hilarious.
lot going on in my brain at the moment, but I do remember, and that popped out of nowhere, obviously. But
Well, I guess now I've
remembered
got
it.
some homework to do after this. Be
I
going
didn't
back
say he
and
makes
listening to
great
Gary
music because I
Travis.
don't remember hearing it. I just said he makes music.
That was from 2022 also, by the way.
Oh wow!
So
Okay.
that was pretty recent. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
yeah. No more. All right. We're ready to move
We
on
don't have a
to the
slide real
next-
quick as you go to the next slide. We don't have a
Yeah.
have a slide for Kendall, but I did see his
No.
name get brought up here a couple times. I've not heard his name included in this. I've not. I don't know that it's anything. Probably depends on who you talk to in terms of if they feel like his name's got mud on it or whatever. I would think that if they brought him here to be an OC before that, that's you know what I mean. If you're willing to hire him to be the OC,
All that had
obviously.
already happened when he was on staff. So yeah.
Yeah. So I just have not heard it. I don't know. Someone's going to give that guy his first opportunity to be a head coach, and I'll be interested to see how it goes. I don't think it's this time right here, right now, but it'll be interesting to see how he handles it once he does get there. I think it's probably not too far off.
I'm not too sold on Kendall Briles, to be honest with you. I don't think his offensive mind is as sharp as his dad's. Honestly, like I mean, that's the other thing is if you're telling me we're going to go get a guy with the last name Briles to be our head coach, I'd rather we retread Art than call Kendall up. To be honest with you,
I quit my job if that happens. I'm just saying it's going to be a circus. I remember the last time. Anyway,
all right, so I got the next guy up. Jeff Traylor out of San Antonio, UTSA.
that's
Heard
another
his
one
name
made
mentioned a
sense.
lot. Yeah, started out as a high school coach. Obviously, spent a lot of his career as a successful high school coach. He's from Texas. He's not from Kansas, so he's got Texas ties. This is a guy that I actually kind of like a lot, and I like him a lot because of his ties to Texas high school football. I mean, this guy has got to know everybody, every coach in the state, right?
Yeah, he is. He's very well respected.
Well respected. Two-time Conference USA Coach of the Year, two-time conference champion. This year, a little bit of a slide, but I don't think it takes away anything that he has accomplished at UTSA. And I think you can see a lot of schools that are probably going to be contacting him also in the next week or two. Probably this week.
I think that's a good point. Oddly enough, very funny. And too, every time I think about Jeff Traylor, I have to go back and look at the years. But I actually went and watched him. I watched a Gilmer game in Tyler. Houston used to always be in Tyler. And so at the beginning of every season, they have this thing up there in Tyler called the Sister Mary Frances, Tyler Rose, whatever. It's basically all the schools there in the Tyler area play each other on the opening weekend of football, and they do it at the Tyler Rose Stadium there and all that. Big deal for them. And so I went up there, and they play like basically 3 games in 2 days, I think it is. Friday night and then 2 on Saturday. But you get to see all the teams in the area, and it was a year that Houston was in there. So anyway, I went up there. Gilmer was playing one of the Tyler schools, and it was Jeff Traylor was there. I remember because his son was a senior that year and was getting recruited by Rice some, and I had done some work at Rice along the way as well. So I do remember him from the high school ranks, and I remember when he went to Texas, and I could tell he was one of those guys you knew was going to climb the ranks, and sure enough, he's done that. And like Kevin says, I think his name's going to be coming up a lot here. It comes up now for this job, but I think it also will be coming up if he doesn't get this job. Then I think it'll be plenty more.
Yeah, if Baylor opens up or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a name that people are going to start, and I think he's going to get a call up to the next level at some point soon, probably. But he also seems like, I know, and all coaches say this, but he seems fairly happy with what he's got going on over there at the moment. But everyone says that until they're not.
Yeah, and something about just haven't gotten the chance to watch Jeff Traylor a little bit and him being so close around here. Like, he wins the games he's supposed to win. But I just feel like he has never won the big game.
Yeah.
They've had multiple shots against us here at Houston, had multiple shots at Texas. He's 0-3 in bowl games. I don't know that he's won that big, like, marquee game in his career.
And the next knock too, Frank Harris has been his only quarterback over there.
Sure, for 7 years now. Frank Harris.
Dr. Frank Harris.
Yeah. So, what does he look like? And actually, we saw it. He didn't look very good without Frank
Because
Harris.
Frank was banged up for the Houston game.
Yeah, and for several games. I mean, they lost to Army, right, because of that game, because Frank Harris was out.
Yeah. So that's a fair knock. I mean, when you're looking from 30,000 feet, that's a fair knock. That what would he do with a quarterback?
I'll tell you an
not named
advantage
Frank Harris?
that he has. Okay, I'll tell you an advantage that he has. He beat Rice this year. Okay.
That's a fair point, Kevin.
Hey,
Sorry, he beat Rice.
not
and they beat
everybody
Rice
can
like
pull off
34 to
task, friend.
14. 34 to 14. They beat him 34 to 14. Okay.
And again, that's a what do you value, right? Because again, you're right. Dana was able to get up for the Texas game. Probably should have won that game.
Yeah.
But Jeff, he wins the games he's supposed to. And
there you go.
That's not the worst thing in the world. It's a fair point.
And we barely beat UTSA the first game this year. Also, in hindsight, we probably should have lost that game. We didn't play well that first game at all.
No.
So I mean, it's not like we blew them out, this year or last year. Last year they almost beat us. Wasn't that the tune? Jump into the end zone,
the helicopter triple overtime. Yeah.
And that's what it took to beat UTSA last year. Okay. He may not be, but give him some better talent, and he might win those games that he didn't win in the past. Just saying.
Yeah.
Perhaps, but again, and again, that I think is for this candidate, right? And again, I think it's an interesting point that we're kind of dancing around in general with all of these guys. Is I don't think there is that perfect, obvious candidate. And when we talk about why was U of H so slow to pull the trigger, this is kind of part of it, right? Is hey, everyone kind of has their lumps, and you have to sort through and figure out which lumps do you like the best.
Where do you place priority on different aspects of your pro and con list? Like I said, the time frame of availability, I think, is playing into it a little bit. But
there is no Tom Herman available. Who's
there's no clear cut home run that you're going to go out and is probably going to be successful. But Tom Herman might be available actually.
Well, fair enough. There's no one who was like Tom Herman
as it was back then. There's no Tom Herman available.
I don't know.
Careful what you wish for, Gatlin.
They lost to Rice the last game, so
hey, Tom Herman's on my list on the site. Yeah, Tom Herman did lose to Rice yesterday, but Tom Herman's on the list from a reputable source. So I'm not saying he's coming here, nothing to that fact. I'm just saying it's not on there just for giggles on my part. So, yeah. Careful what you wish for, Gatlin. We'll blame it on you.
One rising to me why we haven't heard much from him coming out of the University of Houston, but this is a guy who I think a lot of people like. He's a young guy. He's motivated, right? He's been successful everywhere that he's gone. Look what he's doing with Oregon, and how true Oregon has phenomenal athletes on their team, but look what he can do with phenomenal athletes. That's what you're supposed to do when you get really great recruits, right? Is you're supposed to throw up a lot of points in games, and that's what he's doing.
Caller, right? Does anybody know that?
I believe he is. Yeah.
Was he the play caller at UTSA?
I believe so, unless Jeff did it himself.
I don't think so. Jeff. I think Jeff's a defensive side of the ball. Yeah,
probably.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, he's had some success. I think when again, similar to Jeff Traylor, I think Will Stein's going to be a name that's going to come up in a lot of jobs. It's like his turn. Maybe he starts out at a G5 job type thing. Maybe if Jeff Traylor leaves, maybe Will Stein's the great guy to come back and take over at UTSA from a continuity standpoint or whatever. But I don't think he's I put him on the list. I think if they were going to go this route and they weren't going to be in a hurry, that they would definitely do their due diligence with Will Stein. I just don't think he fits in the moment today as it's going to play out. But I like his Texas background. I mean, I like a lot of the stuff. He wasn't a guy that I'd really remembered when they took off to Oregon. I guess I have that natural sports brain of forgetting the left coast stuff that goes on sometimes at night because you don't see it or whatever. But once his name came up earlier in the season and I did start doing a little bit of research on stuff like that, I mean, he makes sense in terms of if the time frame were probably a little bit different.
Yeah, no, I've been banging this drum for pretty much this entire season.
Yeah.
And it breaks my heart, that I don't think he is going to be, kind of fully considered for this job. I think I understand, he's very young. He's only 34 years old, doesn't have any real college head coaching experience. And, I think to some degree, probably the administration thinks they're above having to hire someone who hasn't been a head coach anywhere at this point.
That might be the case.
Yeah, but I think there's a mistake in that. And my analogy that I'll draw is when the Rams were hiring what's his name?
McVay.
Yeah, Sean McVay. So there was a story that came out back when that all happened. I guess they were asking Les Snead about the decision because at the time he was the youngest head coach in the NFL to have ever been hired, and they asked, do you think he's ready to be the head coach? And his answer was, something to the effect of, well, I don't know if he's ready, but he's the right guy. And if we wait until we know he's ready, we're not going to be able to hire.
Right.
Someone else is going to. And that's kind of how I feel about Will Stein. When I watch like his pedigree, his recruiting, his play calling, the way he talks about his culture, like there's an interview he did with Adam Brenneman this offseason about like coaching, his career, Oregon, all that. Go listen to it if you haven't. I think he's kind of the perfect guy for this program. I think he's just a little young, and I don't think that should be what keeps him out of this job. So there's my soapbox on Will Stein. If anybody from U of H is listening to this, please go give him a call.
One more thing about Jeff Traylor. He was, I think, recruiter of the year when he was at Texas one year. I can't remember what year it was, but he was actually Big 12 recruiter of the year. Not that that's difficult at Texas to recruit, but still, a point out there is that the guy can recruit also.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a fair point.
Very true.
All right, those are my. Now I know that there's a lot of other candidates that we haven't.
Oh, we get that. We brought up Tom Herman. I'm trying to think if who else. There might have been one other one on my list, maybe. I don't know.
Kingsbury, Cliff.
Oh yeah,
Cliff Kingsbury, and that's a guy. True. The two that I can tell you for sure, guarantee that they have had contact with, and this is Kingsbury and Patterson. And I think that goes back to the fact that maybe information's a trickle is a little slow at times because it would make sense that Kingsbury and Patterson are the two that are in a position that could step in the quickest in terms of they would have already had conversations with them. So I don't know where they stand currently, although I do continue to hear Patterson as being the kind of unofficial front runner at the moment. I think those two make the sense, and I can confirm they've had conversations with Houston in the last month. So those two are the obvious ones in terms of if you put a huge priority on the ability to step in quickly, I think that's where they gain some value in this process.
Mm-hmm.
So then what would be like the pros and cons of Cliff Kingsbury being the head coach of the University of Houston?
He's not, there goes my camera. Y'all keep talking about it for a second. I'm going to switch my thing.
No, you're fine. Yeah, I mean, I think we're always going, he hasn't won anywhere as a head coach. I think is the biggest con, right? Like he's had plenty of opportunities as a head coach in college football and in the NFL, and has never been able to put it all together for whatever reason. I think certainly pros, the guy can recruit. He's got a real eye for talent. Sorry, my dogs are going crazy in the background. But he's got a real eye for quarterback talent. So certainly, would bring a lot to the table, X's and O's and all of that sort of stuff. It's just, what kind of like program builder, leader, that kind of stuff is he? Would be
how much you tie to it, right? Like he wasn't successful in Lubbock, but do you say, hey, that's Lubbock? But if anybody was going to be in a spot to be successful in Lubbock, it would have been him, obviously, having the ties there and all that. So I don't know. I mean, with Cliff, it's a little bit different. I would lean towards, I would be in favor of his hiring more from a personal standpoint than I would be for a necessarily the best hire for the job type thing. So I think it would be. I've worked with him before, and I think it would help the flow of information. But that's strictly on a personal level. So please, Dr. Couture and Tillman, I know y'all are tuning in. Please don't use that. Don't do it just for me, okay, guys. I appreciate the thought. Y'all use your own parameters.
Well, I think another plus side with Cliff Kingsbury, even though he might, I don't know how much of a chance he has, is the guy's immediately day one 100% more marketable than what we had in the previous regime. The guy, he's not afraid to go around and shake hands and talk to people. And
I
that's
think he's
something
a little
that we got
bit
with the
less
last coach.
stubborn version of Dana in a way.
Yeah,
I think a little bit less stubborn, and I think maybe, and I brought it up one time before, probably not on here, but just in a conversation. I'm interested to know how coaching in the NFL that time that he did, how that changed his viewpoints and outlook in terms of if he is willing to go back to the college game and how he sees things differently. Like it changed Dana's outlook on offense when he became a head coach, because he realized he's got both sides of the ball to worry about a little bit more than just, run and gun on his side and worry about the points. So
right.
I wonder how, being in the NFL where literally matchups are everything, and that's what the league's all about, is winning your matchups, how that maybe changed his mindset if he were to return to the college game, whether it be here or somewhere else. I'd just be interested in knowing that.
Well,
from him.
and Rob, you bring up a good point. Like, I mean, we watched a huge evolution of Cliff's offense in the NFL in terms of how he kind of adapted, that system. And I think at that point, you kind of become a little bit capped in the NFL by the talent that you're able to build, your GM, all of that stuff. Whereas, I think if you could bring Cliff's new offense back to college football and give him the ability to hit the transfer portal and load up on a bunch of, speedsters from middle of nowhere, Texas, I think that would be fun to watch. And
if he's the guy, I think he can be successful. I think maybe I don't think he has maybe any more questions. You talk about Cliff's lack of success overall in terms of his win-loss record, but Gary Patterson had his stretches of success, but towards the end at TCU, it wasn't there. I mentioned that before. I think he got a little stale over there after a while, and that's fine. And that's probably changed him too. I'm interested to know in terms of that, how that process playing out after 20 years over there, whatever, how that changes his mindset heading into his next job.
Yeah, well, and I mean, look, both of those guys that we're talking about, Cliff and Patterson, ultimately those programs moved on because those guys had gotten them back to a spot as programs that 7-6, 8-4 was no longer acceptable for renewing a contract, right?
Yeah.
And that's great. That's kind of, as we're moving into the Big 12, I would love to get to the point where we hire Cliff and 4 years from now, we've gone 8-4 in the Big 12 several years in a row. And now we say, hey, it's time to move on, right? But candidly, like we're not there yet. And so I think Cliff would be a great hire, honestly.
I think like you said, there's no home run here. So I think in terms of, I could see Cliff being successful here. I could see Gary Patterson being successful here. I could see pretty much everybody on our list in the right situation doing like you're talking about, at least getting this back to a consistent winning and bowl eligible program year in and year out in the Big 12. And then you see, okay, is this guy going to continue to take that next step and carry it?
Mm-hmm.
Or is this now back where we want it and we look to see who's next?
Definitely. Because look, as bullish as I am on the potential of this job, and I think it's a really quality job, obviously biased as a U of H fan, I think we have to take a hard look in the mirror and say, someone like we're in danger of being one of the bottom feeders of this new pecking order in the Big 12 if we don't right this ship in the next couple of years. And none of these guys may be the ones, you're right, to long term get us to competing for Big 12 championships. But I think all of these guys, for the most part, are capable of getting us to 7-6, 8-4 in the Big 12, which is a huge step in the right direction for the next several years and kind of saving the direction of this program and not putting us further behind, towards Kansas territory of being, everyone made the joke this year, oh, we're a basketball school. You make those jokes long enough, it becomes real. And that's not where any of us want to be.
I'm a porn star. Oh, sorry. We'll just see if we speak it into existence or not. Sorry, kids, if you go back and watch this later. Your dad's not that crazy, I promise. I was, speak it into existence.
That one kind of surprised me also. There.
I lost 30 pounds this week.
There you go.
But I mean, I'm with you. I'm to that point, and even going through this conversation a little bit has got me, switching up on my mindset a little bit in terms of the perfect hire. This time may not be the perfect hire 5 years from now, but it's got to be the right hire now. Like you said, it's got to restabilize everything in a way.
Right.
You're going to have guys that are going to leave a week from Monday, regardless of what happens.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be guys that leave, and there's nothing you're going to do to change that. I think depending on how they build out the staff and depending on who the hire is going to depend on just how many people leave at this and that. Obviously, if their position coaches stay in with the new staff, that's going to be favorable. We talked, and I know it's been just pretty much widespread across social media and the board and everywhere, but in terms of if you're living in a perfect world and you had to pick people from the current staff that you'd want to carry over, Brian Early seems to be at the very top of that list. And I guess depending upon who you get as your head coach, for sure, I think it would be great in terms of what he's done. He's a great dude, very, very, very good media guy. He's always cordial with us in the media and willing to talk a lot. Will give you good, very explanatory answers if you ask him questions. And I think he does a really good job in recruiting, and he knows what he wants for his defense to work.
Mm-hmm.
And when he gets those pieces, there was a couple of years there early on when the transfer portal first happened, and they got like the Alabama kid, Abianomi, came in, and he was going to be a really good piece. And then, of course, that didn't work out, and he was gone before he ever hit the field. But he's that guy where he knows what he wants in each of the spots on the defensive line, and once he gets it, you see more of like what the defensive line looked like, within the last couple of years. This year's a little bit of a fall off just because of injuries, I think, in the middle so much during the year. But it'll be interesting to see. This offseason, I think, is going to hurt some fans' feelings a little bit, just because I think regardless, you're going to lose some players you don't want to lose. And so it's kind of just where it's getting to be right now.
Yeah. Well, that's the same for every program. Every program is going to lose somebody that they don't want to lose, whether it's a starter or somebody that they think is going to give them some potential that's a backup. Everybody's going to go through it. So, there's no reason for us to be any different than everybody else. I mean, obviously you want to hang on to the, as much guys as you want for just continuity and consistency within your program. But we all know that that's not college football anymore, that it's changed. And that's what kind of, has me curious about Cliff Kingsbury. I mean, he hasn't been involved in college football since 2018. And we know from 2018, things have changed just a little bit in college football as far as recruiting goes. So I don't know how well he would. I mean, I would think that he would be able to adapt to it. He's young enough to have the energy for it.
Cliff has been an analyst for USC for the last, I guess, now 2 years.
Yeah, this year I think he was over there this year.
This year and maybe last year as well. So
last year, 22. I think he coached the full season 22.
Okay. So this year he's been at USC, and so so
he's been working with Caleb Williams.
It's a fair point, but he has been kind of readjusting himself back to the college football world.
True, right.
And again, I don't think he would be letting his name get out about this job if he didn't think he felt comfortable with how his ability to step into a college football program with how the landscape has changed. Good point.
And then of course, once all this comes to being, I'm sure we'll have another live or something after that. But once the head coach is announced or whatever, we could start discussing obviously ties and assistants and all that from there and how it plays out. In terms of other guys staying, Meekins, I know, was named the interim or the acting head coach, which is kind of weird. I don't know, other than just maybe to have someone in the title head that, I mean, football's done for the year, obviously. And
you gotta manage those exit interviews and figure out.
Someone's got to be in charge.
Yeah. If you don't name an interim, your whole team's getting in the portal. And I mean, Corby Meekins is a guy who's been now 3 staffs, right? I mean, he's been around longer. Because he came in with Herman, right?
And he's obviously got tons of ties with the Westfield connection and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
So, yeah, if he stays, then I mean that's a higher decision than me. But I mean, again, he's a guy that's always been pretty cordial and
Yeah,
been fun
that
to kind of get to know a little bit better since he's been at Houston. To be honest with you.
I feel like that's pretty unprecedented. It doesn't get talked about, right? I mean, if he came in with Herman, that's 3 coaches in a row that
Yep.
Meekins has outlived. That's a pretty impressive resume as an assistant coach.
Yeah, very true. And so, trying to think if there's anything else going on. Man, it seems it's been a wild few days and all that, but I want to make sure. Was there anything else we were going to touch on before we got done? I feel like we've been going for a while, but
Yeah, no,
we got a good group in here at the moment. So if recruiting wise, shout out to Blake and Koviak, the intern extraordinaire. I'm pretty sure if someone doesn't stop honking outside my window, we're going to have to witness bad things on this live stream. But
Do it.
yeah, I'm going to take this camera with me.
Ratings.
We're going to go outside and have a chit chat. No, but Blake has been tracking down the recruits for us a little bit today because he's did a good job this year. I really kind of not forced him, but urged him early on to build a relationship with the committed players that we go out and watch sometimes for the high school games. That way, when you get to a situation like this, you have that rapport and you have that relationship where you can reach out quickly, and those guys trust you enough to tell you what's going on. So I know he said he had talked to Caleb Thomas earlier at one point. Caleb Thomas said nothing's changing for him in the moment. He sent me some quotes and a thing, and I'll have that up on the story shortly. But we're working on that end as well, which is obviously something that's going to have to be monitored through this transition. And bad and good. It's not great that they only had 8 verbal commitments in the season so far, but it's good in the terms of I only have 8 people to chase and verify with right now instead of years past, like when Herman left, it was like a full boat almost, and it was chaotic. So, but anyway, shout out Blake, and I've been telling him we've been trying to get him on here because I mean he's a freshman at U of H, and this has been his first year. He got to experience dorm life, living with somebody you didn't know. He's been student section, football games and basketball games, and so I told him in the offseason we have to get him on just talk what his experience has been like. He wasn't in super Houston knowledgeable before he chose Houston and came here, but he kind of dove in all in terms of the student activities and all that good stuff. So at some point here in the offseason, if it ever slows down, then we can get old Blake on here and get some of his war stories from him. Because if I'm not mistaken, he went up to he was in Waco. He went to Manhattan. I mean, like they had a little group of students and buddies that kind of did the cool thing that you would do at that age, and they just took off and had some fun with it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, but Blake's doing that. He's tracking down some recruiting guys stuff for us, and I'll have that info up on the site as soon as we get done here. I'll go work on getting that put up over there. But other than that, I'm trying to think. Obviously, basketball. Thank goodness is in a bit of a lull at the moment after they're finishing up their stuff in Charleston and then hosting Montana on Friday, which was a nice, easy breezy game for them. They don't play again until Friday when they play Xavier, I guess it is, in the Big 12 ACC showdown thing they got going on. And then after that, I know the whole All Guys A&M showdown's coming up as well. So I think this process with this coaching thing is going to move fast. I really do. Like I think it'll be done this week. It sounds fast. Everything in the past is always drawn out. They used to think that these coaching turnovers were great for business in our business. But with the NIL and the portal, you don't have a chance to really draw these things out forever. So I think it's going to move fairly fast. So anybody else, any other guys maybe y'all would like to see kept? Anybody from the staff? I know DeKill Schwartz has done a really good job recruiting, and it's hard to argue. I know the wide receiver room's had issues here and there but overall as a product, I felt like they played really well. He's got good talent in the hopper. You don't want to keep him solely to, again, keep from people leaving, but I think he's earned a look from the new staff unless they come in with somebody already on their mind, of course,
Yeah, I think Schwartz is a phenomenal recruiter, and I think you're right, Rob. If he leaves, then there will be a lot of receivers who do hit the portal. Some of these young guys, I think, had a really great relationship with him and might take a chance at looking elsewhere if he does leave. Into the things we've already talked about, that's kind of just the nature of the beast. I would love to see him retained if possible, but when wouldn't hurt my feelings if he doesn't stay. I think in my mind, the only two guys I'm really focused on are Brian Early and Corby Meekins.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, if it were to be Fritz and Nagavi stays, that would make sense. But other than that, I said along the way, I don't care who the hire is. Obviously, it depends on who it is and what side of the ball they come from. But if I'm paying one person on my staff the most amount of money, I go find the absolute best offensive line coach that has the best possible track record of developing and recruiting. I know it's going to cost you, and I know it's not easy, but to me, that's got to be the most important part. But behind, obviously, I think they should try to take a look at keeping Brown Early. But if you can hire a stud offensive line coach that's got experience getting these guys to the NFL and can show that track record, or maybe even an NFL line coach that's willing to come back down to college type deal, I think that's going to be you got to give yourself every advantage to try to get these linemen. Again, that's going to carry over regardless if it was Holgorsen or somebody else this year. You have got to give yourself every possible chance to land these stud linemen out of the transfer portal, get the kids out of high school that are willing to come develop a year or two before they start playing. That's going to be important for whoever comes in.
Yeah. No, solid point.
Hey, Gatlin, we got a question for you specifically also here about Donovan and what your assessment is of him after a full season.
Sure. I mean, I'm happy to answer if you guys want to talk about it as well. But I mean, I've been saying this on the board for a while now. Donovan isn't the guy. I think he's a guy who can win you 6 games if that's your goal. And he's also going to lose you 6 because of his play, right? And just watched, I mean, this past week I think was probably the worst it's been. But his decision-making is just slow. He's not making the right reads. It has nothing to do with his arm talent. It has everything to do with he just doesn't see it. And again, said it before, unless a light just magically comes on his last year of college football, I just don't see him next year being any better under him. I think you roll the dice with Uyale and see if you can get another guy from the portal, and let them have a competition, But I just don't think Donovan Smith is the answer.
Yeah, I said it to somebody today talking about that. You either have to bring somebody in that's going to push him or pass him. One of those two. You either have to push him to another level that, we could debate whether or not it's even there, or you're going to have to bring somebody in that's going to pass him because he's better, and you have to have a legitimate quarterback competition. That's another thing that's going to happen in these few days and all that, and some of it will make it out, some of it won't, but you already start hearing some weird little behind-the-scenes mumblings and stuff like that. I started hearing this about halfway through the season. More and more people were saying that the quarterback competition back in the fall may not have been quite as open as everybody thought it was. And so this is one of those hindsight deals, and a few more people start coming along the way, and I hear it from different areas. So it's kind of hard to denounce it with hearing it from as many different individual spots as I heard from, but it would also make a lot more sense into how everything played out with Lucas Coley and that situation. Yeah, exactly. There you go. Someone saw where I was going with that one. So
yeah,
I'll let Lucas tell his version of things if he wants to soon. We'll see how it plays out on Monday. I won't be shocked to see him hit the train. Well, I say that, but he's already transferred once.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that was brought up to me is the value you have with so many of these guys that have transferred. It's at least going to make them think twice before they want to do it again because they're going to lose that year. So maybe that actually works in your favor a little bit with having so many transfers on this team. But with Lucas, I don't know. The way it was told to me is he was just basically said, you're the same quarterback we have in Donovan Smith, and we need something different. So like I said, we'll give Lucas a chance. If he hits the portal, it'll be wide open, and I've got a pretty good relationship with him. Maybe we'll see if he's interested in coming on. He doesn't seem like the type of guy that's going to want to come in a bad mouth. I heard nothing but good things about the way he approached it. I can tell you he wasn't a quarterback after whatever that was in the season, but yet every game they rolled him out there to warm up with the quarterbacks. He sat on the bench with the quarterbacks. I do know they worked on a few packages and this and that, like trick plays and this and that with him as a wide receiver, but nothing overwhelmingly serious. But it looked like he did a really good job as a teammate in that situation. He could have just as easily quit, gotten angry, walked away, whatever. But I give him credit as a young man that he he stuck around and did the best and tried to make the best out of a bad situation. So we'll see. If he hits the portal, we'll see about getting him on. If not, I'll at least give him the opportunity to say what he wants to say about.
Yeah, no, and you're right, Rob. I mean, credit to Lucas Kolik. So my tickets were right behind the visitors bench this year, and so me and my brother-in-law went to a bunch of games, and he's a quarterback, and so kind of one of the things we'd sit there and watch is like, how do the backup quarterbacks for all these other teams act? And there's a lot of guys in college football who have really bad attitudes, and they're not hanging out with their teammates. They're not encouraging. They're over there with their posse, throwing the ball or whatever. And Lucas Coley could have done that really easily, and instead he was a really great team guy and never let any of that get to him. And so credit to him for that.
Yeah, I agree. Other than that, I'm sure there'll be a lot of little things coming out. We should have maybe the opportunity to get on a few more live streams now, and coming with this news coming and all that. Once the hire's made, that'll probably be a reason to jump in and this and that. So, we'll keep doing that. I think we'll still continue to have pretty regular live streams recorded, at least. I mean, not live streams, but episodes recorded too as basketball continues. I know the basketball has started and we kind of dipped our toe in there a little bit, but now this is going to be done, at least in the short term, and I can put it on a side burner and all that. We'll start ramping up too. And Blake, speaking of Blake earlier, he's interested in getting involved a little bit more too in the basketball coverage, and as well as he said on the board that he wants to get into the baseball coverage this year. He's got some students that he knows from the baseball team, and so that's another angle he's willing to work on. So I told him, find yourself. No one really does it a lot in this in the beat at the moment, so you might be able to find yourself a little niche and gain some extra followers that way.
Yeah, for sure. All for it.
Well, as Rob always says, stick close to the board. Any information as it starts.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully, conversations keep going on. And as things break, we'll be on the board with it. And then as big news happens, we'll of course try to get back on here. But stay close to the board. We do have a great special going on right now. It's the big one that we run every year: 75% off for Black Monday and Black Friday and Cyber Monday, whatever that is. Black Sunday is what today. I kept making that joke in my mind today. Call today Black Sunday in college football because all these coaches get fired. But anyway, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, 75% off an annual membership. Good deal. It's like $25-$26 for a whole year. You'll get your worth of that before the end of the recruiting season this year, and then you just get the rest for free. But basketball will continue to ramp up now that football's dying down a little bit, and we'll see what Big Blake delivers on the baseball front once we get to that.
Good deal. All right.
Thanks everybody, and like, subscribe, share, whatever. Mail it to your grandma, whatever I said last time, and we'll be back soon.
All right.